football game. I'm at the grocery store.
What?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store.
Wait, you're at the football game
What?
and the grocery store?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store. Groceries through Instacart, delivered to my door. I don't have to choose between football and the grocery store.
It's been an interesting time. There are a lot of things to be said about having a break from reality. And right now, with the pandemic and with all of the social upheaval, actually all over the world, across the globe, we've had lots of different issues and interests to call our attention. At the same time, we've been forced to kind of step back and learn a new way, a new normal. One of those things, though, about personal growth has to do with the dreams that shift during these times. And I wanted to connect with a dream interpreter who actually has a whole lot of relevance because of all the various aspects she brings, including precognitive dreams. In so many instances, I have interviewed and spoken with and learned from people everything but the precog factor. And I think that is huge. And so right now, especially when things are deviating and we are finding different ways of becoming more aware, some of these dreams are telling us exactly what's coming up and how to deal with it. And we need an interpreter, a coach, somebody who's going to say, absolutely right on, go with it. So Pamela Cummins is our go-to gal. How's that, Pamela? What do you think?
That sounds great. Yes. It's all true.
Are you ready? Okay. Well, and I was going over your site. Now you have two. The one is a Learn Dream Interpretation. So if you're listening and you're looking for more, that's the site to go to find out about Pamela. Just as an introduction, PamelaCummins.com. Okay, both of those are great sites and a lot of content. I wanted to just to start out the background. How did you get started interpreting dreams?
Through my own personal growth and my spirituality. I've always been a dreamer, always remembered my dreams, and I'm blessed that way. But I came from a dysfunctional household, and back in 1989, I knew I had to do something, and I started working on my stuff with 12-step groups and therapists. I was in a group therapy, and then my dreams started turning into basically stuff about my past, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was very symbolic, but the feelings were the same. And since I was working on my childhood wounds, I automatically knew that this is what the dreams were about, but I didn't know how to interpret them. I didn't know how to understand them because they were so symbolic. So I reached out to a therapist who specialized in dream interpretation. And she was wonderful. Oh, she was so good. She helped me sit down. I would write down my dreams. We would go over it. She'd give me her input. I'd give her my input. And she was the one who taught me that symbolism is really personal, because I went out, I bought a dream book. This was, back in early 1992, 93.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the symbols and I was like, no, this doesn't make sense. But then I looked at Denise Lynn. She has The Secret Language of Signs.
Yes.
And
yes.
That is a great book. And I loved hers because she gave me, she had like 5 different interpretations, but it made more sense.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot from this woman. And then I had to break away from her because I was really getting more deeper into my spirituality, and I started having a lot of precognitive dreams. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, that's premonition dreams of the future, things that are going to happen. And some of it came true, and my spiritual dreams, and she freaked out. I don't know what her religion was, I don't know her background, but she got really upset, and it was obvious that it was, that chapter had ended. She helped me as far as I could, and it was time for me to move on.
Yeah.
And then after that, I learned to trust my dreams. And of course, when you learn something and it's great and you want to share it with the world. So I started sharing it with my friends, and my family. I'd interpret their dreams. And then, of course, later on, it just came into my practice, which was always kind of on the back burner. I would do it. Oh, yeah, you do dreams too. Tell me about my love life. And then about 4 years ago, I was like, no, this really needs to come on the forefront. I am burnt out on love relationships and giving readings. This needs to come out. And I'm so happy I did that, because I find it changes my life, my clients' life, people who just read my blogs and listen to shows that I'm a guest on. It really does help people.
Okay, so the psychic stuff has been there all along, right?
Well, actually, thank you for bringing that up. My psychic abilities were always there, but because of my crazy childhood, I repressed them. It wasn't safe, okay? It wasn't safe for me to feel all that energy, for one thing. But when my dreams started coming up, and I started having these precognitive dreams and just even like solution dreams, that's when my psychic abilities started coming out in the waking world. They were in the precognitive dreams, but in the waking world. So really, it's because of dreams that my psychic abilities came back.
Well, I also want to interject that you did a lot of self-healing. And in that mode, that movement, that decision, then you allowed yourself to recover, to say, I'm not wounded, I'm not injured, I'm not abnormal, I'm okay. And as soon as you got into that, then that gave you permission, in my way of integrate this, that gave you permission to be comfortable with yourself and not frighten yourself and say, oh, because to me, like you had been shut down and put under, just locked in a little closet to say that's not okay. And until you did your own personal work with all that drama, then you weren't able to access it, and all of a sudden it came flooding through. And I think that might have been what scared the therapist, is all of a sudden she's dealing with a completely different person and an aspect of her personality that before, with all the wounded stuff, now here's somebody who's in the next level. You went from preschool, grade school, high school, and all of a sudden you were in graduate, and she's like, whoops.
Well, whoops. I don't know if I was in graduate school, but, I was definitely out of preschool and probably in the high school or something. That, to me, I think we're always a work in progress. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it definitely scared her. And, and that's okay. That's where she needed to be.
I think it's brilliant because it gave you permission to say, I have completed this course and now I can go on. You had the, I think, confidence and self-worth reinforced in yourself by working through that healing process to reclaim this little child who had been told it wasn't okay to have these kinds of abilities. And then you came back out of that and said, hey, yeah, I do have this, and now I need to go forward and figure out how it works for me. So I just wanted to address that, because I think that therapy aspect went to a point of allowing you to reclaim your worth and your own confidence in your abilities, and that's how I see it was a big factor in bringing you to the ability to be accomplished and say, I know what I'm doing.
Thank you. When you live something, you don't see it. But when you put it that way, yes, I see it, because that's when I always knew that my spirituality was different. Like, there's nothing wrong with religion. I'm an interfaith minister. I see good in each religion, but I never felt connected. It was always kind of my own spirituality. And after that happened, that's when my own spirituality really blossomed.
You talked about having dreams as a child and remembering some of those there's an intro that you do on your dream site. And this is one that if you're, interested in doing dream interpretation and taking classes with Pamela, you can check that out. But I wanted to go back with that, because you mentioned the childhood dreams, and those are important too. So some of us do have memories of dreams from childhood. I want to just kind of touch on that. My guest is Pamela Cummins, and she is a dream interpreter. She does a lot more than that. If you're looking for interpretations of your dreams, then stick around. You can either go to her website or continue listening. We might address something that you're curious about right now. LearnDreamInterpretation.com is her website, and there are books that you can also get. One of them it's like an ebook you can get when you sign onto the site?
Yes, I do have a free ebook, Got Dreams, Discover Your Idea Dream Journal. because it's important to write down your dreams.
Yes.
You know, how are you going to remember them? Or whatever format you like to record your dreams.
Okay, so every night we're dreaming, every night we're talking to ourselves or giving ourselves cues and symbols, and we're going to come back to that symbol thing because that's how it really applies to each person personally. They're not just a universal, every single time symbol. The thing I wanted to address too, though, was the childhood dreams. You remembered a certain dream from childhood, and they started coming back, and how did you integrate that as an adult? What stuck out for you with the childhood dreams? Because I know I had some that were really important. Go ahead.
Yeah, they were basically things that happened in my childhood that basically, I guess you could say childhood memories, but some of them were symbolic too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was confusing. For instance, the one dream that's coming up is, you know, I lived in a Victorian house when growing up, in a beautiful Victorian house. And I had this dream where I was walking up and there were all these dry leaves on the sidewalk, going up the stairs, and there were a lot of stairs. I can see it in my mind. There were so many stairs all over the porch. And basically what that was I had a lot of cleaning up my childhood issues to do.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. And then I had someone, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I had someone who hurt me as a child. And the way that symbolism came up, because I couldn't handle it, all right, it was as a mouse. And that's where my therapist really helped me, because I kept on having dreams of my childhood home, but there was a mouse that was crawling through the wall and stuff. Now, most people would think like a mouse, ew, disgusting, they're eating cheese, they're weak, but they scare us or whatever. And my therapist was like, no, a mouse is sneaky. It can hide places and not be out in the open. Mm-hmm. And that's what the mouse was representing. Yeah. So I did have a few, with my sister and other family members that came out. A lot of it was symbolic, but I just knew, I felt like, it's kind of like when you have a childhood memory, and maybe it's a good one, where you were with grandma and you ate ice cream. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can still remember how great that felt. Maybe you smell, or even like if she cooked cookies, you can smell them. You can remember the apron she wore. So when you dream, it's kind of the same thing. It's familiar. The feelings are the same. You might even be able to smell. Yeah. I hope that makes sense, because people expect dreams to be like you're watching a TV show. It doesn't happen that way.
Okay. Let me go back. For one thing, when I was a kid and my dreams, there were recurring dreams. One, I remember walking through a house, and I was going to ask you, there are interesting things that happen, and your subconscious is trying to interpret them, in some ways protect you, shield you. And there were periods in my life as a child that were dramatic. And one time I remember my mom trying to get my attention. Later, she told me this. I didn't know that at night. There was my name was being called from outside the house. Okay, now in a way to keep me from somehow, I think, being frightened, I shielded myself, and that would have been just part of the dream, instead of later finding out she'd been locked out and needed to come in. But it could be frightening. You're hearing a voice from nowhere. It's like your mom's voice, and it's coming from outside the house. Well, there were things like that had to do with protection. And one was going through a haunted house, and it was a recurring dream. I know from as little as I can remember until I was in 7th or 8th grade. And in the 8th grade, I remember saying, I'm done with this dream, no more. And that was it. I was done with that dream. And I remember it was a recurring dream. I was going upstairs. I didn't know what was upstairs. And it was when you said Victorian house, I thought, oh, yeah, that's a familiar one, because of the way I related to this large, and in some way it felt to me like it was empty, unfamiliar, foreign. And I'm going up the stairs, rounding the corner, and thinking, and apprehensive and fearful. And I thought, I'm done with that dream. It had to do with fear. It had to do with the unknown. Right. It had to do with, progressing and saying, I don't need to be frightened. I'm done with it. But so those kinds of things, even though that dream was important, with that, it was about my emotion and saying this was not a problem. It wouldn't be a problem anymore. And I ended the dream. Does that make sense?
Right. It makes perfect sense. And a house usually, there's certain symbols, but like a house usually is about, where you grew up, who you are, represents your body, where you're going. And think about it, when you're growing up, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where you're going. That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of a dream that I had, a recurring dream, where I was in this home and they had drawers built into the wall. And there were all these cabinets, and I'd open them up, and there was all this treasure, and I was so excited. I mean, it was money and jewelry and gold and silver and diamonds, and I'd be like shoving them in my pockets, down my bra, and my purse, and I'd be so excited, and I'd wake up, and I'd be like, oh, I want that stuff, right? And I had it for many years, and it wasn't until I started interpreting my dreams and things got better for me that I realized all those treasures that I was finding was really the treasure within me. And I stopped having the dream as soon as I brought out the treasure that was within me.
Yes. And that, I think the thing about that is learning to interpret. And when you were just saying the house represents this, are there some uniquely symbolic symbols? And like I said at the beginning of the show, I haven't had much luck with most dream books because they are personal. However, you said house usually represents. Are there any, others that are symbolic that are universal?
Usually, like flying can be freedom, but you have to remember it's the emotion. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like some people will say, oh, well, the basement is the bottom of you, okay? And the attic is the top of you. Well, not necessarily, okay? I mean, think about it. Yes, usually it represents you, but what happens if you're looking for a home? Yeah. Or you have a precognitive dream, okay? And you're moving somewhere and you dream of your home. So not necessarily, okay? Yeah. And again, like the snake. Snake is a very popular symbol. It can be shedding your skin. It could be something very sexual. It could be kundalini.
Yes.
But it can be other things. Like I like to say, well, what about I'm thinking of this guy who used to work for my sister. He loves snakes. So to him, if he dreamed about a snake, it would be his snake buddy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, yeah, and I never tell people don't look at symbol books. I mean, Denise Lynn's book helped me a lot. I don't say that, but take it with a grain of salt. It's like learning. It's like looking in the newspaper for your horoscope.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Once in a great while, it's like, oh yeah, that's accurate. But most of the times, it's not. You have to think, no, I'm not going to meet Mr. Right today. No, I'm not going to lose my job, or whatever they say. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I want to tell you about the most amazing, extraordinary snake dream I ever had and how it related, because since snake is one of those very popular, universal, and everybody at some point might have an encounter with a snake one way or the other. We'll give that one a whirl. Pamela has a couple of fantastic websites. LearnDreamInterpretation.com. That's the one. There's also a wonderful introductory video there that tells you about what you're going to get into. And then there's also PamelaCummins.com, and there are books, so there's some background for everything that you need to kind of acclimate yourself and get started. What I wanted to go into was the dreams can be larger than life. And I've also had visions too, because my background is more intuitive and all this other stuff that I've been doing with deeply spiritual content. The dream was a premonition, but it was a premonition in a different form. And I am entering a boxing ring. In the boxing ring is a snake that would be like the Harry Potter snake, that huge monstrosity of a snake. And it was just so powerful because it said, "Are you afraid of me?" And I said, "No," because I was thinking we were on the same page because we're in the boxing ring. I didn't see it as an adversarial. However, the boxing ring could have been my clue. And the snake said, "You should be." And in the dream, I'm like, oh, good grief. And in the dream, I just, dismiss it and the dream dissolves. But it had to do with a point in my life where I was dealing with both Kundalini aspects and sexuality. And those two things were front and center in this monster giant snake symbol. And it wasn't that I should be afraid. It was going to be an intense workout, which indeed it was. But going back with the Kundalini part of it, in that dream, because of the size and because of the way, the intimidation, it had to do with me preparing myself and understanding that this too was a challenge and an obstacle that it depended on how I met it. But that, I thought, it was a way of, giving another meaning and value to symbols that may not be represented exactly as the book says. And then when I realized, this requires work. Oh, yeah, okay, back to reality and my version of reality. And I thought, wow, that was a brilliant way for me to give myself a clue that I might actually have to do a little extra, put some elbow grease in this part of my life. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It's really it's like the inner fight within you. Because whenever like Kundalini and our sexuality, and we look at our stuff, okay, it's not comfortable. And sometimes we fight it, but obviously you were ready to, there was a part of you that could have been afraid, a little afraid, because that's normal. I mean, because the snake in a sense is you. Are you afraid of this? But you were like, no, I'm ready to confront this, so you're ready to do this inner battle and also transform and come out on the other side. So basically, you're not afraid to grow. Doesn't mean you're comfortable with it.
No.
Because who says, oh, yay, self-growth, I'm going to work on my stuff. Not many people.
Yeah. Well, I had support. Now, the spiritual guidance part that came into it, I had different things, and I've been journaling from my entire life. So part of it had to do with you will walk through the fire and not get burned. And the other one was, this will be the hardest thing you have ever done. So there were other challenges and pieces of the puzzle that said that this was going to be a very interesting time of my life that involved all of, if I had my assets and my obstacles and my the things that we worked on to try to improve and the things that we haven't worked on to try to improve are going to be in all one happy little puzzle. And I was assured that I would get through it. Now, it doesn't say you're going to land on your face or land on your tiny, but you're going to land. And but I thought, of these kinds of dreams, it helps when we are aware that we are able to give ourselves, I think, stepping stones and little helpful pieces to say, this is coming and you are ready. You may not be prepared, but you're ready.
And with your dream, okay, you weren't afraid, all right? Now, let's say that's somebody else, and let's say it's a woman and she's terrified. Are you afraid of it? It might mean that she needs to confront an unhappy relationship she's in, or leave a marriage, or maybe a boss who's sexually harassing her. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's another one. Now, for maybe somebody who's going through some health problems, because the snake can also be, think of it as like the medicine, the doctor symbol. Okay? That might mean, hey, you're going to be battling some really bad illnesses, and it's up to you whether or not you can get through this. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it really depends upon how you're feeling in the dream. Somebody might be like really angry. It could represent, a neighbor that they're always fighting with. And no, I'm not afraid of you, and I'm going to kick your butt because I'm sick of this. So, so that one dream, depending on someone's situation, could mean so many different stuff.
That's why I wanted to just bring this out right now, because with a lot of the circumstances right now, people are being thrown into a reset where the normal has shifted. And so the dreams that come along with that, in a way, are trying to right the cart, that everything is kind of askew. And dreaming now will have different kinds of symbols. At least for me, I have noticed some that are spot on where I'm wearing a mask. And I never wore a mask in my dreams before. It wasn't necessary. Right. Or, the social distancing is, oh my gosh, those people are together and they're too close in my dreams. And I'm thinking, I thought I was past this. Nope, it's going into the dreams.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a point where I actually wrote about it, where I was in a classroom and, I'm sitting there. And somebody came right next to me and was touching me. And I don't remember it now, but I remember thinking, oh my God, these people aren't social distancing and I got to get out of here because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, well, because I work from home, I don't have to go to the store much because my honey, he does the grocery shopping. Because, so I'm not out that much. And I was like, oh, I'm not afraid. And I was like, oh, yes, you are. But it was also kind of like a lesson, like, we're still learning about this. Do you know what I mean? We
Yes.
don't know what's going to happen. And our old normal is gone, and we're entering into a new normal. So, yes, it's definitely going to come into our dream.
Well, it's uncharted territory.
Absolutely.
Uncharted territory. And so there's a lot of challenge with that. So sometimes the symbols that come along with this are different. They are new. They are unfamiliar. For me, some of the precog stuff, it also has to do with a vision, and I'll see it in the waking time. And the vision recently was a fractured view. And I'm actually seeing in my eye, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where's this coming from, my brain, or do I have vision problems? But what I'm seeing is a piece that almost looks like a mosaic, and it's just a corner of the picture. And I thought, well, where is this coming from? But it had to do with fractured. And I thought, oh my gosh, mosaic, fractured pieces. Everything has been torn apart, fallen apart, shattered. And we're living these and getting all these pieces and trying to put things back together and realizing maybe we don't want to put that back together because it really wasn't working the way that it had been in the first place. So that was a vision, and that was a waking vision, a waking dream time vision, because I'm half awake, half asleep, and opening my eyes to see this and realizing, this is a piece of the equation that we're working with. You have those abilities too, if you're listening. And part of this is helping getting that to, I think, awareness and saying it's okay and work with it. Like you have a blog post where you're talking about be true to yourself. I love that. I think it was January. I'm going to pull that back up on my screen, and talking about how to be comfortable with right now saying, these are things I haven't maybe paid attention to, but that are part of me. With all of this upheaval and upset, it might be time to pull out some of those old things that actually were more important and relevant than the stuff we might have found ourselves trapped in.
Oh yeah, and you talk that when you talk about, because I get that, and for our listeners, sometimes you wake upon awakening, you'll get a message or a vision, and one of the visions I got was like of this young girl, taking selfies and, sticking out her butt and making the ducklets, not the buttlets, ducklets. And my angel said to me, it's like, we need to change the world. The world is much more about than taking selfies of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one thing to say, hey, take a picture of yourself and send it to somebody you love, but to admire yourself constantly. And it wasn't saying, and I don't mean to insult anybody who takes selfies, but what they were saying is there's more important stuff in life. Like, how are you treating other people? Are you doing your vision? If you're an artist, are you creating art? Are you creating music? Are you doing what you love? Are you treating others well? Are you helping? Are you doing service work? Do you know what I mean? There's more things than looking beautiful and buying stuff and bigger houses and all that stuff. And we need to get back to what's really important. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is happening.
Well, one of the things I see that in what a selfie represents is the superficial, the external, and seeing that all of that is no longer applicable, because what we had been focused on externally was just a cover. And the real problem is going into the undercore and the belly and underneath and the basement, and see what was covered up, where the bones are buried, in so many words. How do you start just the basics of getting into the core that you are working with on the dream plane at night? And if you are remembering, that helps. If you aren't, then we'll get into that too. If you're into other things like wondering how your own psychic abilities work, a spiritual aspect of your life, then you can also deal with that with Pamela. But right now, I wanted to go back and is there anything we've come through this? Have I glossed over something you wanted to bring up? Because I'm like zooming right along here. And it's like, whoa, okay. So, and you're hanging on for the ride. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, what I find interesting is that some of my clients are having more spiritual dreams, like a shift in their spirituality, which I think is really neat. And I actually had, and I recently put a blog out about dreaming about hair, because a lot of people are having dreams about getting their hair cut, especially when things are starting to open up. And I actually had a dream where just a short version, where my hairdresser died from the virus.
Ooh.
And then I was at this other salon because I needed to get my hair done. And there was a man there, and I was fighting with him, about how I wanted my hair done. And this was actually a precognitive dream. And luckily, and I keep my fingers crossed that my hairdresser, she's not going to pass, because I do care about her. She's been doing my hair for over 7 years. But basically what that was telling me, because when she texts me, and this is in real life, when she texts me, hey, the salon's open, something kept saying, no, 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 no. And then, long story short, is I decided I call it paint. I decided no longer to dye my hair and to let it grow out. And, like the selfie, to be real.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so interesting. And so many, there's so many women who are doing that, because, and this, it seems small, but this is big, because we're bucking against the system that says you have to color your hair because you look old, but it's okay if men don't color their hair. When in reality, when I look at the women with the before and after pictures, they actually look better in their natural color. Okay.
Yeah.
So things like all these beliefs are coming up. The prejudice. I mean, that's stuff that's been going on. That's unhealed stuff from our history. All that's coming up in society. All these, I want to say, dysfunctional beliefs and rules and things that were so right are coming up, and they're coming up in our dreams. Okay. So that's why it's really important to journal what's coming up in your dreams in order to be healed in the waking world. So this society is changing, Yes. And I hope so, where we treat everyone as equal. Doesn't matter who, color, religion, whatever, what color your hair is, how old you are, young, I mean, there's this thing, like when women reach a certain age, they're no longer sexy. Well, look at Judi Dench, the actress. She was in James Bond. Look how beautiful she is. And I'm not sure what she's in, her 70s or her 80s, and she's gorgeous. So I think what's happening is our dreams are starting to really show the reality of the world and what we need to change. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I want to go into, so the starting point for writing dreams, a journal.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's for those who don't know how to remember their dreams. And by the way, I do have a free gift on that in a meditation on my website. Okay. Is you need to set yourself up the night before. I will remember my dreams. I will remember my dreams. And then once you start remembering them, you have to write them down. And the reason is so you can see, like you talked earlier about your recurring dream.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. To see if they're recurring, because sometimes they're not exactly the same. And to see the themes that come up and to start to understand your symbols. And then you can look at things that have happened in your past, like you and I identified with, the breaking of the leaves, all those leaves, because I was working on my childhood issues at the time. So see how it can affect your past, problems that you're having today, relationships that you're having with others, and possibly future things that can happen. And it's not an overnight process. I mean, I've been doing this for decades, and I have friends who have been doing this for a long time, and there's always something new to do, because you need to understand your unique symbolism.
You see, I think that's important when you get into your unique symbolism, that there are times in your life, especially when you're writing and journaling, that you can go back, if it's a recurring dream, and see what triggered it. If there's something that's symbolic that is consistently happening in your life, a new relationship, a new job, a challenging obstacle, or, some kind of a celebration. And then all of a sudden you start having this dream because you've crossed a threshold. You've done something that has put you on a new state, a new plane. And then this comes as part of your next piece of homework.
Exactly. And sometimes the dreams will show, like if the same thing keeps happening over and over and in your life, you might have a dream about that to say, hey, you need to change. So I guess the thing is really just to start and be patient with yourself, because there are sometimes I have dreams, or sometimes when a client first gives me their dreams, I'm like, whoa, wait, let me think about this. Let me break it down.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing is one dream can have many different meanings. Okay?
Yes.
And sometimes it's, especially if it's a precognitive dream, you might think, oh, it means this, right? And then some time goes on, wait a minute, that dream meant that. Oh, yeah. And then things even open up more, and you're like, oh, it meant that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more you live it, the more that reality starts coming to fruition. Then it's like, oh, here's the other aspect.
Right, right.
Okay, so for people who would like to get in touch with you and take your course, this is online?
I have some online courses that are recorded, and I do plan, I intuitively I'm getting to do it probably after September, October, maybe even 2021. It feels funny to say that.
Yeah.
I do.
Already.
I'm opening up to. I would love a group coaching course, and also other courses. But if you want to learn just the basics, on my website, Learn Dream Interpretation, I do have some courses that will teach you the basics.
Okay. Yeah. And coaching, personal coaching. You do Skype sessions too.
Personal coaching. Yes, I do have. Well, I always like to let people know if they want to do it on their own. And yes, I do have personal coaching one-on-one that can help people.
Well, I think it's fantastic that there are opportunities for people who do have the psychic dreams and the premonitions and all to get support in conjunction with the dream interpretation, because for me, that's always been an aspect that I have felt has been missing, is how do we acknowledge that these are precog dreams, because that gives you permission to work on a different level.
Right. And, and what's really amazing is that my most popular blogs are the precognitive, but a lot of times visitations from your deceased loved one.
Yes.
People always want to know about that.
That's the tease, all right, for this next segment of the interview. My guest, Pamela Cummins, and you can check out her blog and her website at PamelaCummins.com. And you are basically one-stop shopping for people who do dreams and also have the precog, the psychic aspect, because that's huge. And so many people now have been saying, this is different. I'm getting different messages. I have different dreams, different symbols. I'm seeing things that I hadn't seen before. I was going to ask you, in that other interview we had, you said you lived in a Victorian house. Was it haunted by chance?
It could have been, sure.
Okay, I was just curious, because a lot of times those older houses have energies, and sometimes, you may or may not be aware of them, but I thought that would have been a fantastic childhood. I was in older houses, and as a kid, I don't remember having that. The house I did have with a girlfriend was a newer house, and at night it was a sleepover, and I saw this arm open the door, and the arm it was a hairy arm, and I saw the hand on the doorknob as the door opened up, maybe 6 or 8 inches, so I could see the light in the background, the shadow, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a Popeye arm kind of. And in the morning I looked at her father, and that wasn't his arm. And so I knew I had seen a ghost in that house. I have no idea who it was, because it wasn't okay to talk about that stuff. But there were some haunted experiences, but not anything I could identify. And I just thought, all right, so that goes into the visitation dreams, because when you're living in a place that is haunted, you can also have other encounters with people that aren't in your own sphere, deceased from either past life, whatever, or from your own relatives. And how do we deal with that? Because I think that is a huge aspect of this.
Okay. So when you mean how do we deal with that, like visitations from our deceased loved ones?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think first of all, let me identify them, because a lot of people was like, well, did they really visit me? Okay.
Yeah.
So, because that's important. So when you have a visitation from a deceased loved one, a lot of times not much is going on. Okay. It's almost like you're having a visit.
Yeah.
There's usually a feeling of love, and sometimes words are spoken, sometimes they're not. You hug them. They might look like younger. Let's say it's like your father. He might look like he's in his 20s, but it's him. They usually look really good. And it might be some simple thing like, I'm okay. I love you. I can't wait for the birth of your child. Well, do you know what I mean? It's nothing really big.
Yes.
Okay. It just feels like a lot of love. Then there's issue dreams where you have issues with them that haven't been resolved, whether you're angry that they left or you're sad that they're left, or, as we talked earlier about unresolved childhood issues. Okay. And those can come in, and those usually have an array of motion and can be very symbolic. And sometimes what happens, which I find really interesting, is that you could have a visitation dream of them that could trigger off an issue dream, or you could have an issue dream and they realize you're upset and then they come and visit you.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty neat.
Well, they come and they try to help you resolve it.
Exactly, because they're like, oh, you're upset. Let me see if and it's because of me. Let me see if I can give you some love. This is a good way of putting it. Let me help you heal that because I love you. And really, the way to explain like an actual visitation dream is that it feels beautiful. You feel better afterwards. And there's just kind of like a knowing that really happened. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times visitation dreams, when they're most active, is when the person has either just is about to depart from the planet, just departed from the planet, or it's been recent.
Right. And
usually that's kind of like, hey, I'm okay. But sometimes they come back later on when you're ready, because if somebody has like I've heard people say, I've been wanting, a dream from my deceased loved ones for like years, and my brother or my sister or, husband or wife, whoever has them, but how come I don't? It's usually because you don't remember them, or you still have unresolved stuff that they can't get through, mm-hmm. or you're afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. You're blocking it in some way, whether it's subconscious or, that thing of it can't happen. It can't happen. So it doesn't.
Right. Exactly.
When you have a precog dream about a relative, and that's my grandmother, before she passed, I got this issue of her, and this was really interesting. I won't give you all the details, but part of it was I saw her in a room by herself, and at that point she was in a care facility, and what I saw behind her was blood on the wall, and it was like the writing was on the wall, and I knew I had a certain time within that period to relocate and be back home in time for the funeral because I wasn't living somewhere else. But that was my very graphic and accurate dream of her passing. And it was completely out of context because she was always healthy when I was around her, and she was in her 80s. So when this happened, but it was that thing of, oh, okay, this is real and this is serious, and I wasn't going to be able to be there before she passed, but I knew that it meant that I needed to be home to be there for the closure and for the transition. And so there are times when we have dreams that could be frightening if we don't understand the relevance. Right.
And I love that the kind of like the writing on the wall, that is interesting. Yeah, there are definitely premonition dreams to let you know that someone is going to cross over. And it seems upsetting and scary, and I have a different viewpoint. I think it's beautiful because you can resolve any issues you have with them. You can have closure, or sometimes it's just to let them know how much you love them. And if you can't be there in person, you can call them, go on Zoom. And if you can't do that, you can send out the energy. I had that happen with my cat Midnight before she died. And I had a dream, I won't go into it, but I was so upset. I was crying in the shower, and I turned off the water and I'm crying and she came, and she wasn't doing too good, and she came and she visited me, and I was like, I don't want you to die.
Yeah.
Like she came into the bathroom, and I was like, I don't want you to die. And she was comforting me.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew what it was about, because at one point she just flashed, it was like she flashed in my mind her entire life that she had spent with me.
Yeah.
It was kind of like letting her know, hey, I love you and thank you for this life.
Yes. I was here for you. You were here for me. And my cat, one of them, he was in my dream constantly. His name was Huey. He was white. He was beautiful. He was a one-person cat, but he did tolerate my husband. It's like, okay, you're okay, but and he would ride on my shoulder, whole 9 yards. When he passed, they were just shocked because they discovered he only had one kidney, and that he was 12, and there was just no way that he had. It was an extraordinary thing. Well, I grieved for quite some time, about a year or so, and I had other pets, but that was it was very difficult. And at that time, I was trying to figure out, I was looking at making a move and whether my car would work. And he came to me with the 2 kittens that I had, the 2 other cats. I was in a basement. And he came to the basement and he walks down the stairs. He opens up the door. I'm seeing him through the window. He opens up the door, and the color of his fur is the color of the car seat that I had, the same material. And I knew, okay, it's okay to keep the car. It's going to get me from point A to point B. I can relax. And I remember when I said, oh my God, I knew you would come. I knew you would come. And that point was kind of the letting go to me to come out of the basement and allow myself to connect with these other 2 pets, and also let him leave, knowing that it was a transition. And so all these things in that dream, and then my emotion as a result was to stop pining. And there was another thing from the guides that said, as every time you pine for him, it's like picking up the phone and calling him, and he's trying to move on. He has other things he needs to do on the next plane, and you are holding him back. I thought, whoa, and that was a guilt trip. Okay.
Yeah.
It was also a reality check. It was a reality check. Yeah.
But it's not always easy to let go.
The grief. Grief.
Yeah. And it's funny because after Midnight died, I got Merlin about like 9 months or so later. It was like, I gave birth to a cat or something. Mm-hmm. And I had a dream where, and you don't even need to interpret this, anyone can get this, but I had a dream that Midnight was on a pedestal, okay? And she jumped down, and then Merlin jumped up, okay? And that was her way of saying, okay, now you can put another cat on the pedestal.
My turn. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the cool thing. Yeah. Sometimes it's so obvious. It's just so obvious that our dreams are saying, okay, here's the next phase. And yet, it depends on your emotion if you're ready to accept that. And I love the way it started out with you, with the therapist, working on all those childhood issues, because that's crucial. A lot of times, the only thing holding us back is that trauma. Before we had any ability to say, this is the way I want the world to work, we're being told, this is the way the world works, and your rules do not apply. Well, I was born with my rules, and I want to test them out. And at the same time, everything around you is saying, well, that doesn't work here. And until you have the freedom to say, that wasn't my program, I was assigned that program by society or whatever, it doesn't work for me, and I'm now free to apply my program, my learning, my abilities, my gifts. And when you went to the therapist and worked through all of that, you could come out of the closet and say, wow, I am psychic. I do have these abilities. And that's huge.
It is. And for anybody out there, who thinks that they're stuff that happened to them in the past doesn't matter. Well, it's going to come in your dreams, but even worse, it appears in your life over and over again, whether that's through relationships or the same types of things happening or being upset. And I like to compare it to when somebody has a dog that was abused, okay, and they say to somebody else, oh, well, she's shy and kind of skittish because she was abused as a puppy. Everybody understands that. They don't push themselves. They don't immediately try and change her, okay? But when it's a human who's in the same situation,
it's like, okay, fix it.
yeah, exactly. No compassion. And I want to say that think of yourself as that puppy or, little child who was hurt and who needs to heal.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's going to come out in your dreams. And if it was something that's really, really, traumatic, that's known as post-traumatic stress disorder, that will definitely come out in your dreams.
Yes.
And you definitely need a therapist for that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important. You need a therapist for that. But this way, when things come up, like you were saying about your grandmother, okay, somebody who had unhealed wounds about their grandma might have thought maybe I shot them, I killed her,
mm-hmm.
or would have taken that dream a totally different way because they were so wounded they couldn't see the truth in it.
Yeah. 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 And for me, it was oh my gosh, I'm on a clock. I've got to get back. I have to get back. And it's because from my perspective and my reality, my relatives who have crossed over have been there and they are at their funeral. And so that's part of it. Did I show up? Was I able to show up? And on some level, I had agreed to that. So I knew it was important for me to return and show up. And it's everything's different. Everything's for each person. But in this instance, there was another reason for me to do that. So it was like all of a sudden the clock started ticking and I had a certain amount of time to be able to do this. And that's what's so, I think, important about learning your own symbols and learning to interpret and remembering the emotion that goes with some of these symbols is also a clue, whether it's yours or someone else's that you're trying to work through. Somebody, they've assigned it to you.
Right. And when somebody gives me a dream to interpret, I never say, this is exactly. I might really get a strong intuitive sense, like, yes, this means, this means this.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to give a couple for them, and because really, I'm not inside of them. They know what happened in their past, how they felt in the dreams, their life's problems that they're having today, their hopes, their dreams. So they're really the best interpreter, but I will give them a dream. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And what I mean, it's so obvious with the one that I gave about my two cats. It was so obvious what that dream meant. But if somebody says, no, it couldn't mean that, I might be like, well, maybe, that's the black and white inside of you,
mm-hmm.
for all you know.
Yeah.
So again, one dream can have many meanings, but it's important to explore them. Very important.
And I think that relates, I was just going back to your blog, the one I chose was to be true to yourself. And I love that because, don't beat yourself up for listening to others' advice that leads to mistakes. And there's in my life, somebody had connected me with somebody and then said, oh my gosh, 1,000, I'll die 1,000 times for putting you with that person or, introducing you and all that. It's like, no. You were the piece of the puzzle, the equation that got me to be where I needed to be at that time. It is not your fault. I am the one who made those final decisions and choices, and it was necessary to be in that place, and you were just the conduit. So it wasn't, so some of those kinds of things that, be true to yourself and know that sometimes you have to show up for the challenge to pass the course, to graduate and to go on to the next level. And I like that, being true to yourself, and that's self-love. It happens all the time, and you give yourself permission to go on your journey and know that there's something there that requires you to show up.
Right. And when you do make a mistake, and guess what? You're going to make a mistake. We all do. Is to love and forgive yourself. Okay? I mean, sometimes it's like, oh my God, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And it's like, wait a minute, I'm only human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I made a mistake. I mean, as long as you're not doing a violent crime, I mean, that's different.
Okay,
I want to just put that out there in case anyone says, oh, give me permission. But, we all make mistakes. We all learn. And sometimes those mistakes will come into our dreams, talking about dreams. Mm-hmm. and it shows how we really felt about a situation in our life.
Okay, I'm going to go
Because
back.
a lot of times,
I'm going to underscore this, okay? If you're listening, you do not have permission to be a nitwit, okay? There is karma. Yes, it exists. I don't care if you don't believe it. It does come back to haunt you. So there you go. You cannot be a nitwit. And that is what we're saying about this. On the other hand, you are responsible and accountable. And these are ways to help you claim your accountability and claim your knowing that says, this is the right thing for me to do, and it does not harm someone else. All right, so I just had to spell that out concrete.
Yeah, that is important. But we do learn from our mistakes.
Yes, yeah.
I mean,
that's a different category.
Yeah.
Different category.
Right. But when you go into denial and you're like, well, I'm just using this. My parents want me to be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
But then you're having dreams about being a doctor and how much you hate it. But then you're sitting there and you're painting and you feel so peaceful. Well, that's showing the truth of your situation and the truth of your feelings.
The truth of wanting to be independent and guide your own life. You're painting, that's creating. And that the emotion that comes with that says there's a different path. It may not be a painter, but it is creating. And yeah. And
yes, exactly.
All of this stuff is a way of saying that we are not just the body. We are not just whatever identity, whether it's a mother, a sister, a minister, a lawyer, whatever, a bus driver, all these things. That isn't the person. It might be the identity for society, but the individual is a spirit, and the individual is an energy and a light form. And beyond all of this, and learning to listen to your dreams gives you permission to open up to your soul and listen to what is my soul here to do. And that's where this comes in, I think, handy to say, I'm going to crack the code.
Exactly. Well, your dreams are all about you, who you are, how you feel about everything, your desires, your hopes, where you need to go next, the best way to live your life. It's all about you. So I like that. When you crack the code, you're just learning about and going deeper within who you are and within your personal and spiritual growth and you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we got to wrap. So connecting with you, and if somebody hears this and they can check in with you, and what? There is like there a perk?
Yes. What I'd like to do is give you $10 off on my service, whatever service that is, and use the code. Email me. Okay, and there is a contact form, and use the code WG3.
I like that. That's the Trinity. WG3.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Yeah, I like the number 3, and the WG is for you, so I know where it comes from.
Well, it's mind, body, spirit. All right. So WG3 and that on the contact form with PamelaCummins.com, or if you're going to check out the website, that will work on either one.
Yes. If you go to PamelaCummins.com, you will, underneath my services and on my homepage, I do have a link that brings you over to my other website, LearnDreamInterpretation.com, because I know some people are like, how do you spell interpretation?
Yeah. Google.
Yeah, exactly.
Pamela, thank you. I appreciate your time. I love the fact that you include the precog stuff in here, because I think that's also important, especially now when more people are understanding that they have these abilities too, and they need a resource to go to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting me be on here and also be open to it, because not everyone's open to it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
And if you're listening, remember, you are creating your reality with every thought, with every breath, with every ounce of this being here. You have the ability to change your life, and the dreams are a key. Thank you for listening.
Ay, mija, abuelita's on her way and I still need to shop for the party.
No worries. Let's order through Instacart.
¿Insta qué?
Sí, Yama. We can order groceries and more online and get everything delivered in as fast as an hour.
Everything for dinner? Carne, tortillas, limas, plátanos.
Claro. Anything else?
Just make sure the plátanos are ripe.
Get groceries delivered same day with Instacart so you have more time for family. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply.
I'm at the football game. I'm at the grocery store.
What?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store.
Wait, you're at the football game
What?
and the grocery store?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store. Groceries through Instacart, delivered to my door. I don't have to choose between football and the grocery store.